All right, welcome everyone to the Chicago Football Connection podcast. I'm your host, Steve Letizia. Follow me on Twitter, TFC Bears, joined by my co-host, Luke O'Grady. Follow him on Twitter at Luke O'Grady. And we're talking about whatever the hell that was yesterday.
Right.
It should be a good conversation. I'm really looking forward to talking about it as I have been all day. But yeah, obviously Bears lose on a Hail Mary. They should never been in that situation in the first place. And we kind of just based on our vibes seem to be in the same place. We're just like, who cares? This is dumb. Football's dumb,
So
and
silly.
the Bears will always be bad.
The thing that sucks is I think hello.
I'm here. I'm here.
The thing that sucks is that we're gonna see that for the rest of our lives. That is
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing that's annoying is that moment. We'll never be able to live that moment down.
Yeah.
But it should have sent 4 or 5 in the rush.
I
100%.
couldn't agree with that more. That's why I showed that right
100%.
away because that's so true.
The fact of the matter is, and I've seen some other cool stuff about how teams go about it offensively now too. But the fact of the matter is there are and it's more than just Eberflus. There are so many teams that run the same type of coverage and even team mindset and theory around the way to go about it. They're doing the same things that Curly Lambeau was doing in the 40s. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There's a spy.
Yeah, the spy on a Hail Mary is so stupid. I don't care who the quarterback is. It could be
The play before.
and it could be Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick's baby back there, and you.
I know.
Yeah, you still have a spy back there is dumb, and the play before the Hail Mary is stupid too, and the fact that Eberflus is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, man. You don't need to be that far off the ball as long as you have what you believe to be a good amount of people behind that first line. Like, you can have people be within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage to avoid exactly that and have them go with them. Considering where you are in the field of play at the time, that this is going to have to be like a 65-yard, 70-yard throw from Jaden Daniels if they need to throw it, and that's before that last out. Once they got that 10 yards, then you actually do need to worry about being a little bit closer to the line and having room to back up because that like first hit he can throw that 55 yards pretty much in the air. When it's 65 yards, he's going to have to run around for 15 seconds. You can line up closer to the line of scrimmage and try and defend both. It is pretty frustrating. Players are clearly not on board with how Flus manages games. Yeah, we can get into that. I think it's probably worth looking at that game. I think it's interesting to look at that game if you imagine that Hail Mary play had never happened. Even if you don't imagine that the Bears won. It's a pretty interesting game to look at to say, this defense held the Commanders, who have been hanging points on everybody, to 0 touchdowns and 12 points. Basically, you take that Hail Mary away. That's what the game was, and that's a really, really, really good thing. Culture being bad may be overblown. I don't know how am I able to pop these up on the screen. I'm reading some comments here. The culture being bad could be overblown. It didn't seem like. I tell you what, the way that Tyreek Stevenson conducted himself was a very, very bad look for the culture, right? The way that Jalen Johnson spoke about it today wasn't good for the culture either. It wasn't indicative of a good culture either. The way that Cole Kmet spoke about it today wasn't indicative of a good culture. The way that Shane Waldron spoke about execution rather than decision making didn't I don't think rubbed people the right way. I thought that Eberflus's post-game press conference was extremely obtuse as well. Like, it didn't seem like it bothered him as much as it bothered everyone else that's involved in the Bears organization.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties.
Yep.
I'm just turning off the mics. I'm just doing this on my phone. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, the culture, I think I think it is getting a little overblown, as Swift Goat here does say. I think the guys are frustrated after one game. I'm not ready to throw away the entire culture. I think when you lose a game like that, things are going to be said after the fact. The thing is, you just can't let it snowball. You have things are coming up right now, and you can't let it get out of control. And that's Eberflus's job right now, is to contain it and talk to the guys and say, "Hey, listen." What he should have done is say, "Hey, I fucked up.
Yeah,
I did not," but that's not what he did. So he's already off to a bad start. But he's got to contain it in the locker room. He's got to make sure that this does not snowball into something bigger and get into. Then we can start having a bad culture conversation. But up until this moment, the culture seems to have been good. We've talked about it on past podcasts where we think Eberflus has had the culture in a good place. And I think like I said, what we're seeing right now is just all the players that are upset that we lost in a stupid way.
Yeah.
And next week's performance will go a long way to getting that back on track. But I mean, Eberflus is not on the hot seat, like from losing his job wise, because I think he's safe through the end of the year, pretty much regardless.
Yeah, Bears don't really do that.
But he's on the hot seat in fans' minds. I think a lot of people calling for him to be fired, and I think that's fair at this point from a fan perspective. But yeah, he's just got to get this. He's got to get this back on track, and it's not going to be easy, but that's his job. That is his role. He's got to get this back on track. So we'll see. But he made some bone. I mean, the play before the Hail Mary was so stupid. That was such an old school way of defending a Hail Mary. You cannot give up just free 15.
Seriously, like I actually was looking at it thinking this is absurd.
I said it when it happened. I was there with my wife. I was like, you can't just let them get free 15 yards. I tweeted it right away. And then the actual play call on defense too, with the rushing three with a spy, is so dumb. And so just the way he handled that was really cool. And we haven't even talked about Eberflus must have signed on. We haven't even talked about the Doug Kramer handoff play,
right?
Which almost seems like an afterthought at this point because they didn't go back down this field and score. But that's something that kind of is getting lost in the shuffle. It's bad when a handoff to a backup defensive lineman fumble on the 1 yard line is like the third or fourth thing that you can complain about. That should be the worst thing in every game. But it's bad. It was bad.
Yeah, I said this while you were gone, but I said before, like you really start to think about where we are now. I think it is important to think if they break the Hail Mary up, if they don't get that 95-1 play, whatever it is, if they break it up, what is Eberflus's report card for the game?
Well, that's the thing. I think that's actually a very good point. I think that would be, you would give him like a B plus or something like that, because
held the Commanders to no touchdowns, 12 points.
Held the Commanders to no touchdowns, rallied the team together, made some adjustments, and they came back and won.
Completely.
So it's the same thing.
Second half points.
It's the same thing. Like if, let's say, Doug Kramer doesn't drop that football, how many Doug Kramer memes are we seeing on Twitter today? Like, oh, Doug Kramer's so cool. Like,
I know
it's such a reactive and and that's not just Bears fans. I think that's all fans. But yeah, I think that's a very good point. If Tyreek Stevenson is in the right position, isn't celebrating before the game even ends.
Yeah,
we're talking about Matt Eberflus having a great game. So I think that's important to keep in mind. The other thing I think we need to keep in mind is, I don't know about everyone else, but I'm really tired of from a fan base standpoint of after a win, the Bears are back, we're going to a Super Bowl, and then after a loss, the sky is falling, we need to fire everyone. Like, we cannot have these like huge swings in emotions. Like it's a game. You're going to lose some games that you should win. You're going to win some games that you should lose. It just is what it is. The Chiefs have lost a couple of games this year. Like, you're going to lose games. I mean, obviously this one you just hate to lose in the way that they lost, but I still don't think we should have these wild swings of emotions based on football games. Like, the Bears are the same team they were 2 weeks ago. So.
Yeah, going into the season, the expectation for the season was, see what you have in Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can develop some players in the meantime. I think a fair criticism would be of Waldron to this point. His decision making, decisions he puts in, just doesn't make sense right now. It's not. There's no beauty to his offense. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And that's serious. I don't know what's going on, but I think stuff like that is the reason why this week, more than I've seen it in the past. Obviously it's a tough loss, but I would feel better about Eberflus if there didn't seem like there were so many people coming out and saying things this week.
Yeah.
Or maybe that happens after a tough loss. Like
that's what I'm saying.
You could say silver lining, like Matt Eberflus for the rest of his career should be blitzing on Hail Marys like that. And like for the rest of his career is playing 5 yards off the line until like it's time to, and then like just have 5 guys back kind of thing. Protect the sideline.
Yeah.
Like those are things that, he gaffed it and it lost us the game, but it's in a season that, we didn't, we were always going to be long shots to win a Super Bowl and like, again, if that doesn't happen, you look at it and say, Eberflus is the reason we won the game,
Right.
Caleb Williams did turn it on the fourth. Caleb Williams is going to have some up and down seasons. I honestly could care less about how Caleb Williams played. The only thing the Bears, I think, deserves some concern right now is he like, as much as he doesn't want to say it's true, he is getting nervous for these games.
Yes.
He's forcing things early. But if I could sign Caleb Williams to a top of the market 10-year contract right now, today I would. I'm not worried about him. But I am worried about bungling this year over year.
Yeah.
Like you need to find out right now. I think you do need to pull Shane Waldron into a room and say, this is terrible. Nothing's working. We should have put on a show there. And instead we got embarrassed and we snuck across the finish line. And then as fate would have it, we ended up losing a game we probably should have lost.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to have to just give them the year because you wanted to give them the year. And then maybe you don't fire him because maybe Flus, I honestly would say, has seemed like, if he can leave the offense to the offensive coordinator, he can run a disciplined team and he can absolutely build a defense that causes problems. That was the toughest task that the Commanders have had all year. And until that last play, didn't score a touchdown. 12 points. You got to win the game if you score 12 points in the NFL.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the defense played well outside of one play. I don't think this is the 13th straight game that the defense held a team under 21 points. Yeah. Like the defense is not the problem, which I know that's Eberflus, but the problem is they hired a really good defensive coordinator to be their head coach.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be bad enough. I think I would be surprised if Matt Eberflus is not the head coach next year. I think it has to get way worse for that to happen. And I almost kind of want it to get a little bit worse so that they can get Ben Johnson in here and then we can run a real offense. I know you might take a step back defensively, but I mean, if you bring in a defensive coordinator and you give them Jalen Johnson, Montez Sweat, Javon Dexter, Terrell Edmonds, and if that defensive coordinator you bring in can't make that work, then that's a bad defensive coordinator. Like I think the pieces are there in defense where any defensive coordinator could come in and at least have a pretty good unit there. So, but yeah, it's just frustrating.
It is. I don't want to see this, the continuous circle of getting new offensive minds and new offensive personnel to a quarterback that we're trying to evaluate.
I do wonder, with Shane Waldron, obviously, the first couple of weeks they said they weren't scripting the first 15 plays, and then they said, okay, we're going to do that, and they looked really good. It did not appear that they were scripting those first 15 plays. I don't know, maybe they were, maybe they just looked bad, but it did not appear that way. They were doing a lot of pre-snap stuff where, Caleb gets to the line, see what formation they're in, and then call a play, which is great. I think is a good idea for most teams, but I don't think the Commanders were a defense that you had to get that really cute. They're not a very good. They're not a bad defense, but they're not a good defense either. I don't think you really need to get that crazy. I would like to see them just kind of do what they did before and script their plays and get some easy complete. They weren't getting easy completions for Caleb. It just was a completely different offensive game plan, I feel, than what they found success with in the last 3-4 weeks.
Yeah.
And like I said, I know the last 3-4 weeks were against not great defenses, but the Commanders aren't that good of a defense. So totally. I don't really know what was different there. I do agree with you. Caleb can say whatever he wants about not being nervous. He was nervous in this game. He was nervous the first couple weeks. And that's just, totally. It's just obvious. You can see it. Some of his throws, just he's rushing him. His eyes are moving faster. His feet are moving faster than his eyes, I should say. And it just looks like he's rushing.
Yeah, you can tell when he's in the zone.
Yep, and fourth quarter, he was not having the issues. He was more relaxed,
and it was just coming to him.
Yeah, he's just playing naturally.
So it's pretty obvious when it's not right now, and it's not the best, but by the same merit, like, you know, as an offensive coordinator, you do need to see, you know, we've been running the ball well the last couple of weeks, and it's been working, and we've been able to build off that with the quick hitting stuff.
Yeah,
it seemed like they had intention of coming out in this game and really wanted to work the quick hitting stuff first, and it kind of felt like a baby with the bathwater thing. Because it's like, one, if you got a quarterback that's, you know, been getting his nerves up a little bit for these big ones, just settle him in and start getting the ball moving with some run plays and maybe even some keepers. You know, get him moving, whatever it is. But I just didn't like the game plan, and I like the Bears' offensive personnel. So it just doesn't feel like we ever come out and do the easy stuff. It never looks cohesive, and I don't know why that is. But here's the thing: Matt Eberflus better start getting fucking serious about it.
Right?
Because his job actually is going to be on the line. And if I'm Ryan Poles, I need to start realizing that mine might be too with this debacle if we don't get it right with Caleb. He needs to go in and talk to Matt Eberflus and say, hey, take this fucking seriously. Because that was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. And people have gotten fired for less. You know, you've won 13 games in the last 3 years. People are saying that I should fire you.
I just don't know if there's anything. I would be shocked if he's fired at the end of this year. I think the Bears are going to win 7-8 games, whatever it may be, and they're going to say, we have the cap space, we have draft picks, we're going to run it back, and we're going to have the continuity, and we're going to just be patient. It's all coming together, and we're going to be a middle of the pack team for the next couple of years. Like, that's what I see right now. The offense. I want to get back to kind of something you said about the offense, like and the personnel. I do think the Bears have good personnel in offense. I think they use their personnel poorly.
Yep.
You got Gerald Everett seeing the field where he shouldn't be. He gives you absolutely nothing.
DeAndre Carter in that drive under 2 minutes.
Yep, DeAndre Carter was out there. I think DJ Moore might have been still banged up at that point. But yeah, why? I mean, why is he out there too? Like, I mean, you have other wide receivers, and then also you have Keenan Allen running, trying to get open deep, and it's like, why are we doing this? And we have Rome Odunze working stuff underneath, and it's like, why is that not flipped?
Well, how many times have you seen Keenan Allen just line up doing option routes in the slot?
Yeah,
he's always outside doing these speed outs, and it's like if you only give him one option, it's like it hinders exactly what Keenan Allen does nice, and that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say I like our personnel, just the way they're being used.
Yeah, exactly.
is brutal. And honestly, the offensive line it's been tough because they've never really ever put it all together in one game, and there have been some injuries. But it's been playing a lot better than people have been getting credit for. They need to pass block better, but the run game is like they're getting some things going, and it just feels like Shane Waldron is really like putting a cramp on the Bears' offense right now.
I do agree that their offensive line has been playing better. I still also think that they need an overhaul, and they pretty much on 3 spots of the offensive line at least.
Yeah.
Going into this offseason. And then it depends on what I think Darnell Wright's been playing well. I think he's set at right tackle there, but we know that they were potentially looking at an upgrade on Braxton Jones. I think they could potentially do that in the offseason, although if Braxton Jones is your left tackle next year, I don't think that's the end of the world.
Yeah, I know.
But at minimum, you're looking at 3 new offensive linemen, and yeah, they ran one option route with Keenan Allen that I saw late. I think it was in the 4th quarter, and we completed it. Otherwise, we had Keenan Allen going in motion, and then trying to do like a wheel route. And it's like, why are you doing that with Keenan Allen? Do that with Rome Odunze. Do that with DJ Moore at least. It just doesn't seem like they're putting their guys in the position to succeed.
Dude.
And then you have
the goal line
running a fullback dive.
Not only that, it went back to the goal line and got to the 1 yard line, and we did a fullback dive with our defensive tackle or whatever, and we fumbled it, we lose it, and then we get another penalty on a shot from Caleb, and we get it on the 1 yard line, and we run this little look option fade route to DJ Moore.
Yeah,
Like it's asking to get in trouble, especially with a rookie QB. Like eventually, and when if the moment calls for it, I'd live and die having Caleb make the play and be the guy you use. But like, you don't necessarily want to have to put that on your QB all the time. Like, just run the ball 3 times there.
Right.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, why is it so obvious and we're not doing it?
You could tell a lot about an offensive coordinator when they get into those situations and what they do, and whether it's the speed option, whether it's the goal line fades, whether it's the fullback dive with your backup center. Shane Waldron just tries to do too much in those situations where you just need to do a QB sneak at least. QB sneak, where you're on the 1.5 yard line, do a QB sneak, or just get under center, run the ball, or even I'm even okay with a shotgun run in that situation because I'm okay if you want to spread out the defense.
Yeah.
And do it that way, fine. But just run the ball. get 1 yard. If you can't trust your offensive line and running backs to get 1 yard, then
that's actually what it is. It doesn't feel like he trusts his boys to execute enough to like any situation where it's like, we must be passing. And he's like, okay, I can't do that. They know we're gonna be looking for a normal pass. We gotta try a screen. Or you're on the 1 yard line and you got 4 downs. And you got Roschon Johnson, who's basically money from the 1 yard line on these runs all year, and he goes, "No, but they would expect me to do that."
Right. I said this week.
I gotta throw this.
I believe it was week. It might have been week 1, probably week 2. I think I said on the pod too that every play call that Shane Waldron does, he says to himself, "Oh, they'll never see this coming." And we're really good at this. We're going to run this until you stop us. And that's the way he calls games, and I hate that.
And it feels like literally the opposite of how like someone like Ben Johnson calls games.
Yes.
Where it's like,
Ben Johnson
impose our will on you. This is like it feels like we're like on the defensive, whereas like the Lions, for example, but any good offense feels like they're imposing their will on the defense.
Yeah, even the games we played well, I felt it was that way too. Like just thinking about like the double fake pass and then over the middle to Cole Kmet, like that worked, and it was a really cool play design.
Yeah,
but it was again trying to catch guys off guard, and it just worked because it was at the Panthers game that happened, because the Panthers stuck. Oh, Jags, yeah, and it worked because the Jaguars are bad. And then when you get to slightly better defenses that are more disciplined, when you try to do stuff like that, it's not going to work. You got to run an offense, and you got to find what are the Bears good at right now? Running the ball, I guess, but they don't run the ball as much as they should.
Yeah, running the ball outside, they're good at, I would say.
Yeah, the screen game, I guess they're good, but that's probably just because they run a lot of screens. I don't know. It's hard to find. I don't know if the Bears have an offensive identity right now.
I think that Caleb Williams runs the screen game well, just being like that it's so snappy and he comes with such velocity that he gets the ball in his boys' hands quickly. So I think he'll probably always be like a plus addition player on those screens, and the Bears will probably always have an all right screen game with him. We run the ball well outside. We pass the ball over the middle pretty well. To the outsides and long stuff has been a little tougher. But that's what I mean. Like, we don't really have an identity, and like that's an issue. It's like I think going into the season, we have an offensive line that's got some continuity. We have we've said 3 good running backs and someone that's probably pretty fairly considered a +1 player at quarterback as well. If you want to run read options with Caleb Williams, you totally can, and he's done it with a lot of success already this year. And I figured that would have been a really easy place to point and say that's probably going to be the identity of the team, like a good running team. Before the season started, we had some good continuity other than maybe at one position on the offensive line. We had what seemed like 3 good running backs ready to go: Swift, Herbert, and Roschon, despite now seeing how they're being used. And someone that I think fairly can be considered a +1 type quarterback in Caleb Williams. And we've seen him do the RPO stuff already and have success and have games where he's rushing for, over 50 yards and help move the chains. That seemed like a really obvious place to start for like a rookie quarterback too, because, it keeps the pass rush off. It brings the safeties down a little bit, makes everything else easy. But it doesn't seem like we've seen that naturally, that natural progression of the offense, like getting that identity. and then building off of it into like, the screen stuff and the play action boot stuff that Caleb's so good at.
Yeah.
It just looks forced right now.
Yeah,
I hope these are the conversations they're having in Hallis Hall.
Oh, I'm sure they are, but yeah, you're right. They didn't do a lot of play action boots that I remember. Maybe they did, but I can't really picture any, which have worked really well. They did one. They did it in the fourth quarter, wasn't it? Where they did one there. But anyway, I think they could get a little bit more of that. But yeah, they don't, like I said, they don't have an identity. The quick pass game usually has worked. It did not work yesterday. But I think they really just need to be a more run first team, and
yeah,
I think rely on DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson. I wish they would rely on Khalil Herbert, but who knows what's happening there? Hopefully they can trade him and get the 6th round pick for him. But I think with Roschon and DeAndre Swift, you have two guys who can kind of set the tone, and then you can kind of work off that with play action and everything like that. I think that's what you got to do right now, and you got to do something better than what they're doing right now.
Yeah, something's got to give on offense. The Bears have two very winnable games coming up before by far their biggest game of the season. In Week 11, Bears travel to Lambeau. Caleb Williams' first time seeing the Packers. I would, unless I see some good growth from this Bears team, specifically the offense and their direction and identity the next 2 weeks. I wouldn't feel good about the Bears' chances in that game. It's been half a decade since we beat that Packers team, and no matter how good I always think we are, it never goes how we want it to go.
Never.
It's crazy. So that's what Bears have a chance to win these next 2 games. I don't even really know. I would say these next 2 games are important. If they rebound and they win the next 2, it's kind of like, it makes it tough, right? It's funny that people beat up on Flus for beating bad teams, but Nagy and Trestman would lose to bad teams.
Yeah,
and you kind of have to beat bad teams before you can beat great teams, and I think he gets a little bit more flack for that than he should, though. You do start having to win big games eventually. I think that Packers game will probably set the tone for the rest of the season. Even if the Bears lose, but they compete, you can make an argument for the coaching staff staying or keeping the offensive coordinator at the very least. But if they come out flat like they did against Washington, man, I don't care. I don't want to see some game where they look better in the fourth because the pressure's kind of boiled away, and then we say maybe this is fine. That Green Bay game, they better show something. They had to start to roll.
Yeah, like I said, they got 2 weeks. Because you're right. They have to kind of know who they are. And they have to come out strong against the Packers. I mean, it's not just the fact that it's the Packers and it's Ravens. It's a divisional game, and you need to prove that you can compete in a strong division. So these next 2 games are kind of get right games. The Cardinals and the Patriots, right? That's the order. So I think the Cardinals are a little bit better than people give them credit for. I don't think the Patriots are any good. So, but those are kind of to get right games, and so go into Lambeau with some momentum. And like you said, you don't necessarily have to win the game, although it'd be really nice. But you got to be competitive, and you got to look the part. I think one of the reasons why, I'm not even really considering Eberflus getting fired is they had a perfect opportunity to move on from Eberflus after going in after last year. They had the first overall pick. They were getting a new offensive coordinator anyway. They knew they were taking a number 1 overall pick quarterback. They had a perfect opportunity to say, hey, we're going to get everything in line. Coach, quarterback, offensive coordinator, all in line. And they didn't. So that means, to me, Ryan Poles, Eberflus and Ryan Poles are connected, and they're going to be connected, and he's not going to fire him unless things really go in the way opposite direction and things start to get really bad. But I don't see that happening either. I think this is, again, it's we get too high after wins and we get too low after losses. Losses happen. Yes, it was this bad way to lose, but it kind of is what it is. I don't think it's not gonna be like that the rest of the year. Like we can't keep every time we lose, just immediately say fire everyone, move on. Like it's just what happens. Sometimes you lose games.
Yeah, for sure. I remember in the 2018 season, we started 0-1. We went to Green Bay and we lost. And then I think we won 3 in a row. And it was Mitch Trubisky's second season, and we traded for Khalil Mack, and it was like, okay, like we're starting to like believe again, kind of thing. And then we lose to the Dolphins, and then we lose. The Patriots come to Chicago, and we lose that one too. And I remember after that, like thinking like Nagy sucks. Nagy doesn't get it. Like he's soft. He's like moments matter. They came home. We're losing to bad teams, and we're supposed to be good. I think we ended up going on like a 6 or 7 game win streak. And it's like it is sometimes hard to see some of the forest from the trees. Like right now, it feels like we suck, and it feels like the offense is a lost cause. And I was right there with you, thinking about the long haul of what it means to like misplay this situation with Caleb Williams right now. And if this was like indicative of what the rest of it looks like maybe we are in trouble. But we're 4-3 in one of the tougher divisions in the league, with two really easy, with 2 really winnable games coming up. At 6-3, like anything is possible again. And I would say like the crowning, or like the most important thing is I still really do believe that Caleb's the guy, and that's the most important thing at the moment. If you really believe that Caleb is eventually going to be a guy in that upper echelon, like the guys like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, and Patrick Mahomes, like proved to be situation proof, and they, maybe they weren't all that case right away, and that's why I'm fine. Like when I say like I'm happy to give Caleb 10 years kind of thing, is that like the saving grace is that eventually I think we won't be able to spoil him. I just don't want to have to waste these first couple of years being incompetent around him.
Yeah, the expectations for Caleb Williams were way too high. It was always going to be any rookie quarterback that comes in is going to have some struggles. They're going to have some successes, and then it's gonna kind of go that way for the first year. If we're at the same if we're in week 8, we're going into week 9 next year, and we're having these same conversations, then we have a different conversation to be had. But I agree with you. I do think he's at least going to be an above average quarterback, like top 10 in his career. Maybe I just don't know if he's 9-10 right now, or I don't. Let me rephrase that. I don't know if in 3 years he's going to be 9-10 in the top 10, or 4-5, or 1-2. I don't know that yet, but I think it's safe to say that he's going to be an above average quarterback at least. So that's the least of my concerns right now. But the other concerns start with the coaching staff all the way around. We haven't even talked about Chris Morgan, the offensive line coach, but I think he's definitely gone after this year, regardless, because our offensive line, they've played better, like you said, but it's still not good, and they have not had anyone develop. They have not had anyone develop on the offensive line over the last couple of years. You got to have some accountability there. You got to bring someone else in, and you need to overhaul that interior. So,
the thing that was annoying is they didn't have a very great defense, and we were supposed to have a good defense, and they had pressure all game, and it felt like we rushed 4. Like it felt like we didn't start blitzing until the second half. It felt like we rushed 4 almost all game and never got pressure. Jaden Daniels had time all game, and it was the difference was stark, man.
Yeah, the difference is when we get pressure, it's usually one guy getting pressure.
Yeah,
and when we give up pressure, it's 2 or 3 guys who are getting pressure, and that's the difference. So our pressure rate might be the same, but it's having one guy break through versus having 2 or 3 guys break through. That always seems to be the case. So yeah, like you said, you got 2 winnable games coming up here. So let's say the Bears win them, and we're 6-3. Then we got the divisional games coming up, 6 division games in however many weeks. What's your prediction for the Bears' division record? I would say you're probably losing both games to the Lions. The Lions are just a juggernaut right now. So you kind of almost have to. You'll be lucky to split that. You're at least losing one. You're most likely losing two because they're probably the best team in football.
Yeah.
I think both Vikings games are winnable, and I think both Packers games are winnable. So if you beat the Vikings twice and split with the Packers, and then lose to the Lions twice, that's 3-3. I think that's pretty reasonable. And maybe that is slightly different. Maybe you do sneak a game from the Lions and then lose twice to the Packers or something like that. I don't know, but 3-3 seems doable.
I think that you get one from the Vikings and you get one from the Lions.
You think they get one? You think they get one? I don't think anyone's beating the Lions. Honestly, the Lions have more touchdowns than incompletions over the last 5 weeks.
I know, it's just craziness. That actually is absurd. They're definitely in their bag, but I don't think anyone gave us a chance to beat them last year, and we were kind of their dads last year. If it wasn't for the silliness at the end of the last year, we should have beaten them twice. The second time we play them, they're coming to Chicago late in the year. I think that we win that one.
Okay.
I don't think we ever beat the Packers, and I'll never pick us to beat the Packers until further notice.
All right, that's fair.
And I think when the Vikings come to town, we can take one off the Vikings as well. I think the Vikings are slightly a little fool's gold here.
Well, they've lost 2 in a row now. I think they're coming back down to earth.
Yeah.
I'm not super scared about the Vikings. I mean, I think they're kind of on par with the Bears in my eyes. I don't think they're a bad team. I think they're just an average team. So like splitting makes sense. We could win both. We could lose both. Like that. Any scenario there would be unsurprising to me. But okay, so let's say. So what did you have? What did you think? Was that 3-3 then, or was that 4-2? What was that?
Yeah, I think 2-4 honestly.
2-4
in the division.
So okay, so but if we're 6-3, then 2-4, so that would be 8-7.
And then the deciding games.
Yeah,
the Seahawks and the 49ers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we go to Levi's Stadium in early December, and I think we probably lose that game.
Yeah, I mean, but even conservatively here, we're talking 8-9 wins conservatively.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think.
So you firing your team, your head coach, who has a rookie quarterback, after an 8 or 9 win season? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. And honestly, you look at it and say, you won 3 games your first season, you won 5 games your second season, you won 9 games your 7th season. Sometimes you do need to realize that, like, we're probably in an era of being a little bit too rushed. Because if you're actually, like, from a poll's point of view, if you're actually okay with eventually giving, Caleb Williams, like, the 10-year contract, the 2 extra years you gave Eberflus will be like a drop in a pan kind of thing. Now, when someone has aspirations of 8 Super Bowls, you do need to start to get moving quickly. But like, Lovie Smith started his first season like 5-11, and then started his second season like 1-4. And it could have been really easy at that point to say this guy's not going to do it. And then the next season he made the Super Bowl. Dan Campbell had 2 losing seasons in Detroit and like started his 3rd season 1-3 or 1-4. They could have fired him there too. Like, right now in the last like 15 games, I bet you Eberflus has probably won 10 or 11. He's 4-3 on the season, and if it wasn't for a crazy last-second Hail Mary that, albeit is probably a lot to do with his fault, but still something that just having 11 football players on the field, you probably should have a good chance of not having that happen. He's, 5-2 on the season, just beat the number 2 overall pick that everyone else was already crowning as the next great quarterback. He'd be, they'd have a chance to be going 7-2 here following his next 2 games. And like the narrative is totally, totally different. So it's like, I think that the Hail Mary play was so unfortunate because like if you're 5-2 right now, man, the Bears are looking at that trade deadline and being like, we're buyers.
Right.
If we can add someone to this roster right now that makes a difference, like if someone was shipping at like a world-beating defensive tackle, or if someone was shipping, like if you wanted to make the play for like a Quentin Nelson, even though I think we both kind of agree that's not exactly the way that we'd like to get aggressive. Either way, you could make sense of that. And it's funny how they catch this ridiculous Hail Mary, and now people are saying blow it up.
Right.
Like that's actually how big, but and almost fairly, people would be saying both, and that's how big of that's how crazy that one play is, man.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, the ball bounces a centimeter a different direction, and the Bears are 5-2. So
5-2 with 2 easy winnable games coming up. The narrative is that your quarterback turned it on when they needed it to. Your head coach knows how to scheme up against top offenses.
Yep.
All of that is still like kind of true, but now it's just not, because one thing that Eberflus will never get wrong again, he got wrong.
I think that's a really good way to look at it. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said about getting too high or too low after losses. Like, I think you nailed it. I mean, you can't. The Bears could be very easily be 5-2 right now, and things. Everyone's outlook is completely different. No one would be calling for Eberflus to be fired.
No, the league would be saying start to watch out for the Bears.
Yeah, and you'd be buying, and you'd like you said, you'd be probably trading for someone.
100%. You'd call every team and say, "Hey, who has Detroit called you about?"
Yeah.
We want them.
But also now, I mean, I know like we're talking about like a fan reaction, like where fans are a little. It's a little ridiculous to call to blow it up over it. But also, I think it's also ridiculous for like Poles is not going to be buying now. Like you can't.
No, you can't.
At 4-3,
now,
at 5-2,
that's
like
the humbling
difference.
And now it's like, okay, we never really had Super Bowl aspirations this year anyway, but we're not. You probably instilled some own doubt within the building, like, are we who we think we are? Because if you win that game, you really have to believe that you can start to compete with some of the better teams in the NFC. I think a lot of people would look at the Commanders and say, are they the class of the NFC right now?
Yeah.
And we should have beaten them. I mean, it's funny to say should have. The game happened exactly how it was supposed to happen in the end. But it's funny to think that, like, I remember watching the game and thinking the Bears defense was playing bad per their standards. They weren't getting as much pressure as you'd expect. They, whenever they almost got Daniels, he always got away. It really felt like we were missing the opportunity, and we held them to 12 points and basically no touchdowns. Like,
yeah,
it's a funny spot to be in. I think the next 2 weeks will be important, because that would have been easily my outlook, and I wouldn't have said anything else about it, except for the fact that there has been more talk about the locker room and people doubting, and Jalen Johnson saying what he said, and then Cole Kmet saying what he said, and Tyreek Stevenson film and all that stuff.
Yeah,
it has made it so that it's worried me that maybe there's a bigger leak in the boat than I realized, because I think you go and you win the next 2 games, you can really start. If Caleb plays good, and then is able to show up for a big game after that, you play good against the Packers, like, everything can be forgiven for like this goofy loss. But if there really is trouble in paradise right now, and you lose either of the next 2 games, I think you really do start to have to wonder about coaches making it through the season. Because you're not, because you lose either of the next 2 games, you're not going to beat the Packers, and then you're starting to spiral.
I think if you win the next game, if you beat the Cardinals, then it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows again.
Right.
If you lose to the Cardinals, then it maybe gets out of control. But I think, like I said, Eberflus has to. This is the coach's job. Is to things will happen over the course of the year. Things happen in the locker room. Things are said. Things are done. You're dealing with 53, or whatever, 60 grown men. Like, shit's gonna happen, and your entire job is not. It's not X's and O's is a secondary thing.
Totally.
It's making sure that your locker room is intact. So that's for all, Eberflus is a really good defensive coordinator, but for all intents and purposes, the reason that Eberflus is a head coach is because he's a culture guy and a player's coach. So if he can't stop this from kind of boiling over, then that's really bad because that's his whole appeal.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's a little overblown. I think they're going to go out and either beat the Cardinals or at least look a lot better. And I think you're not going to see as many things. I think guys are just rightfully upset the way that they lost. I think if you don't lose on a Hail Mary and you just lose the game, like maybe they had a little more time on the clock and the Commanders just went down the field and kicked a field goal to win it or scored a touchdown to win it, and it was just normal. I don't think you get those leaks that come out about people being upset and everything. I think it's just like another loss, whatever. We'll get them next week. It's just the way you lost, and then guys just get frustrated with that, which is understandable. So I'm not as concerned with I think it's a little overblown, but I do want to talk. We haven't really talked about it much. We've kind of hinted at it, but Tyrique Stevenson celebrating before the end of the play. What do you have any takes on that? What are your thoughts?
I
think we have to talk about it. It's kind of a big moment.
The fact that the ball was snapped and he wasn't turned around was absolutely insane to me.
It was a horrible look.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Aren't you taking this seriously?
I mean, he got burned earlier in the game. Didn't he also get a penalty too? Was it him, like unsportsmanlike conduct, or was it someone else?
Yeah, it was him. He stuck his finger in Buddy's face.
Yeah.
He's always doing that. He's a hothead. He is a hothead.
Yeah. So that was just not a good look for him at all, especially considering what happened earlier in the game and that he
got burned.
And I'll say, I said this on Twitter and said that he's not had a great season overall, and people some people, commented saying, "What the hell am I talking about? He's had a great season." I don't think that's true. He had one good game at the first game of the year.
Completely agree.
Good. And then since then, he's really hasn't done much, and he's gotten burned a lot.
Yeah, I think that's kind of fine. These are good reps for him, and he was always gonna get tried a lot playing against Jalen Johnson.
Yep.
I'm still bullish on him, but I also totally agree. I think he's having a sophomore slump. I think he played better last year.
And I was gonna get that too. I'm not saying that like he's a bust and he's terrible. I'm saying, things have not looked great.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, I'm still bullish on him. I still think he has a lot of potential. But he is having a little bit of a sophomore slump. But Jaquan Brisker had a sophomore slump. Kyle Gordon had a sophomore slump. Like, it happens a lot to DBs. It's tough to from year to year. Even the top guys from year to year as defensive backs kind of fluctuate with their level of play. So so you see it a lot with young guys too. But I do think he has all the talent in the world to kind of get that corrected. But man, that was a really bad look, and he owned it. I mean, credit to him, he did own it and apologized, and he apparently talked to the team and got kind of things right. But then also I think he was put into a tough situation too. There should have been a timeout called before that Hail Mary. They should have had the chance to do the whole Hail Mary because they should have called the play before that better. But yeah, that was just a really bad look. I wouldn't be surprised if he maybe not suspended the game, but just, I guess suspended the game, kind of just make him a healthy, not an official suspension, but make him a healthy scratch next week just to kind of send a message. Because it sounded like even though he apologized, I think some of the issues that other players had, like Jalen Johnson, Cole Kmet, was also kind of directed at Tyrique Stevenson. So I think you got to do something there, just kind of send a message.
Dude, Russell Wilson is absolutely effing dealing right now.
Of course he is.
I love to see it. I agree. I think I thought what he did at the top of the pile was more abhorrent than all the silly stuff.
Yep.
But honestly, maybe not. He was acting like it wasn't fucking over, and it wasn't. He was acting like it was over, and it wasn't fucking over. And that's what happens when you act like it's already over.
Yeah.
And I hope that wasn't the sentiment or the feeling with some of those other guys. It didn't look like anyone else was acting like that, but I thought the fact that he went in and basically popped it up trying to do a volleyball approach to the ball was worse than all the showboating and stuff.
For sure, especially since it was revealed that he was the guy who was supposed to be boxing out behind him.
It sounded like,
but that was his job and that was his role on that play, and he tried to be a hero and just
it's exactly what it looked like. He wanted to be the guy to run in and smack it down so he could get in everyone's face. And
or I want this pass breakup to show on the stat sheet, even though
whatever it is.
whatever it is. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that was not a good look.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I think people were saying that maybe a benching is probably deserved. I think you could probably bench a guy for that. I think if you didn't bench him, that's fine too.
I think you got to. I think you have to. I think you have to send a message, especially when things are starting to boil over a little bit. I think you got to send a message, and then that's just not okay.
Yeah, honestly,
take a
especially
hit.
considering some of the other players, it has seemed like they've said like people need to start respecting.
Yeah,
themselves
Cole
more
Kmet said
here.
it. It
Yeah.
seems to be. It seems like almost that this was not an isolated incident. So
Yeah,
send him for a week. You have some good. I guess that also depends if Kyler Gordon's playing next week. If Kyler Gordon's back, then you have some more. It's a little bit easier to bench him because you just kind of replace. You just have one backup at corner instead of having two backups. But
totally, yeah, yeah, and I think it's a little bit. I think if you didn't have someone that you really liked at that position, waiting in the wings, and like you do in Terrell Smith,
yeah,
maybe a little bit tougher. But I think a lot of people would love for Terrell Smith to get more reps. There's just not a very obvious place for him to do so right now.
He got in the game a little bit yesterday, and I saw at least one play where he kind of locked down Terry McLaurin. So
nice. That's our guy. We love Terrell Smith on this pod.
Yeah, big
yeah, I think a benching is probably fine. Maybe even necessary. That's like I said, it's really hard to understand the gravity of that loss because the world is so different if they just break it up. And if the Eberflus regime ends up failing this year or early next year, I think you probably look at that moment and say, it's similar to Jay Cutler breaking his thumb or the double doink kind of thing where everything was different afterwards. It really does feel like that. Not to mention now you're just never going to hear the end of it in the debate between those two. One of the, Jaden Daniels has one of the greatest plays in regular season history, truly in NFL history, to beat, the guy that was taking one pick over and the last two Heisman Trophy winners. The Commanders will literally always have that. And even that aside, the season is so different in such a crucial playoff race at 5-2 with the tiebreak on Washington. You're absolutely starting to push the chips in with a quarterback that just came from behind in the fourth and won you the game, and now he's won 4 in a row, kind of thing. And instead, now you're 4-3, and you're questioning the coaching regime and wondering if people are rightfully so, wondering if we're squandering our quarterback's opportunities with the play calling and yada yada yada. Instead of saying, hey, it's good to get wins while we're still getting better. It feels like the world's falling apart. So they definitely do need to take however they manage this within the locker room seriously this week.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, it's a big game coming up because you have to come out strong, and this is almost kind of a must win. I said earlier that you have to keep it close to just look good, but I think it's actually kind of a must win for the locker room.
Yeah, totally. If you lose, exactly. If you lose this one,
So you have it's the Cardinals, and I'm assuming we play at noon.
Yeah,
you have the Cardinals coming up. Well, the Cardinals are a very beatable team. It is a 3:05 game. Interesting.
And it's in Arizona, correct?
In Arizona, yeah. So the Cardinals are a decent team. What's the line? We got Arizona -1 is what they opened up at, so that's not bad.
Arizona -1. Some juice to that. We're a better team than they are. That's for sure.
Yeah. Take Bears money line.
Yeah. I think how the Bears respond this week will be very telling.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to look at it. I think one play is going to inevitably make the season look a lot different going forward. It's unfortunate because the narrative could be very different, but how the Bears come out this week.
Yep, we'll know everything we need to know about this team and the coaching staff based on how they play this week.
I agree.
If they come out flat and just looking like that, then it's like, okay, this team quit.
Totally.
That if they look strong, it'd be like, okay, then Eberflus got the guys going and he got the locker room right, and we're back.
If they go out and have another game just like this, where it looks like the offense pisses off and the defense comes out and grinds and tries to hold the whole time, I think I'm willing to move on from the Shane Waldman experience sooner than later.
Yeah. I agree there. Shane Waldron has not been impressive to me, even during the good weeks. I think it was more Caleb.
He better figure it out. Because honestly, now I'm starting to feel like, you used to hear those the rumbles that Pete Carroll had to tell Shane Waldron just to do some stuff, just to run the ball and take the easy stuff sometimes. And I'm starting to feel like I want to say the same stuff to him too.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I remember that. And we all were like, "Oh, old man Pete Carroll. The game's passed him by." And that's like, maybe Shane Waldron needed to be reeled in.
And you think of it, imagine Shane, Pete Carroll hearing that and being like, "You guys don't fucking get it."
Yeah, Pete Carroll's like these fucking.
You guys think you get it.
These fucking losers with podcasts.
Yeah.
Think they know football. They think they know more football than me, Pete Carroll.
Yeah, they're like, if they only knew what Shane Waldron would do to this offense.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, tough one.
Tough one.
It's not. I think there have been, in the pantheon of Bears losses, there are still 4 or 5 in the last decade or so that I know are worse than this, or that hurt more than this. But this wasn't good. It changed the outlook of a really promising season. It could have been really. The thing is, you can't be too mad because expectations should have always been finding out what you have in Caleb, developing the roster, setting the position to be a Super Bowl contender next year, which I don't think is untrue yet in the slightest. But this season becomes a lot more fun than I think anybody would have given it credit for if you win that 5-2, staring down the face of 7-2 with the world still ahead of you kind of thing. So it sucks that in one play we kind of watched that go, and I think that's what was so draining about it. But I don't think that much of the season is very different because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was always a game that was going to be, it's not like we had the Commanders circled on the calendar like, oh, that's an easy win. We didn't. It's all about how we lost. It's not the fact that we actually lost.
Yeah.
If we lost this game 24-21 in just a normal standard fashion, we wouldn't be having anywhere close to these conversations.
I actually wonder, do you think this would be in the top 5 Bears losses of
no
regular season?
Oh, regular season, maybe just bad losses. I mean, I guess, but just again, it's just how they lost. I mean, it's just stupid. Like, I think if it's Bears losses all time, that's very short sighted because we've lost some really bad games and more important games. I mean, this was a non-divisional regular season game.
Yeah. I was thinking regular season, and I was also thinking maybe post 2000. I was thinking my lifetime, but I mean, it came to mind. I remember when we got pounded by the Packers.
Yeah, but when we were down 42-0 to the Packers
at half.
At half, yep.
I wanted to cry.
And then the game against the Packers, Khalil Mack's first game, when we were up like 24-0 at half.
I was at that game. I wanted to cry.
And then they came back and won. Pretty much every Packers loss the last.
Dude, how about the one where Aaron Rodgers rolls out and scores a 70-yard touchdown on 4th down to Randall Cobb to
the NFC Championship game.
I mean, you want to make playoffs, double doink. Like,
there's so many more. I think it's very recency bias to say this is one of the Bears' worst losses of all time.
No, that one Aaron Rodgers was the sickening week 7.
The Bears have a long list of losses to choose from, unfortunately. So I think it's a little bit short-sighted. It's just the most recent loss. The most recent loss is always the worst.
2019 season opener.
Yeah.
Holy
terrible.
Smokes. That one we go put up a stinker in Chicago versus the Packers.
Yeah.
And Aaron Rodgers goes same old Bears, a season when everybody had basically Super Bowl expectations. That one literally took the wind out of the sails for the entire season in the first week. We still made the playoffs, and I remember watching the playoff game being like, whatever.
What about that game? It was like 2012 or something against the Giants, and it was like either Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, where they had like 12 sacks.
Oh my God, Jay Cutler Jay Cutler's first game as a Bear, he throws 4 picks.
Yeah,
Sunday Night Football.
There are a lot of bad losses to choose from.
Seriously,
we can go on.
It almost makes you feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
It could always be worse.
That wasn't even in the top 10 worst losses of all time.
But also, It would have been so goddamn good if we won that game.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
On to next week. We're on to Arizona.
Arizona.
I just see now that I'm on the ESPN.com. Arizona has given up 205 points allowed this season. The Bears have allowed 119. So the Arizona we got to put some points up against the Arizona Cardinals. Hoping for a win. We'll be back next week to kind of talk about the Cardinals game. Hopefully it's a little bit more upbeat. Hopefully my computer works
Totally.
and all that stuff. So, but yeah, we'll be back next week. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks everyone for commenting, like, share, all that stuff, and we'll talk to everyone.
1 hour and 1 second on the nose. How's that?
Nailed it. Bear down.
All right.